Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Outer Rim. I am Eric and I'm joined this morning by Lou, Tom, and Tim. Lou, how are you doing this morning?
I am doing great.
Yeah, good. Tom, how about you?
Yeah.
You know, I've been getting harassed before we started recording for how early I watched the show. And I think this crowd should be celebrating my commitment to the show. So I expect apologies.
Who's harassing you for watching it so early?
You know, Tim gets a text from me yesterday at like 5 a.m. demanding to know whether he had watched it. And he said that he had just gotten up like a normal person. And then I felt bad. Isn't that
the same argument that you like? When I tell you that it's 8 a.m. on a Saturday and I'm still in bed like a normal person and you get all like indignant about it.
8 a.m. is not.
You hush, old man.
Wow.
By the way, Tom, I am a little ashamed because I actually, in the process of getting something to drink and grabbing some food and letting the dog out and stuff, I did not start my viewing until 3:03, almost 3:04.
Well, you're on a slightly different schedule than everybody else, so I give you a pass. You get to watch whenever you pass. You know,
I only missed it. I only missed it by 3.5 minutes, Tim. How much did you miss it by?
A few hours.
2 hours. Okay, how you doing, Tim?
I'm just hanging out here with my meerkat, training him to attack you.
All right. Gotta watch those space meerkats.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, today we are discussing the not the Outer Rim. Here on the Outer Rim, I've had no caffeine and I've had 3 hours of sleep for the last 2 days. And I'm working a night shift tonight, so I'm a little not entirely with it, which is good. That's why we have these guys here who are also not entirely with it, but we'll get through it.
We're here to lift you up.
That's right.
Your human caffeine.
That is right. My ship is falling apart and I'm just going to crash land it into this planet and let the other guys put it back together here. We are discussing the 4th episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian, titled The Siege. And what are your initial thoughts on this one? This one is kind of, I think we discussed last week, we thought we were not going to get Ahsoka, or if so, at the very, very end. And we were correct that we did not get Ahsoka. We thought we would probably get some story movement. We did, in the sense of some pieces of information we get at the end to kind of fill in some of the puzzle, which probably good enough, more so than we got in episode 2. So that's something. That's story progression. Some action scenes, some visiting of old friends, etc. What did you guys think of this? Tim, we'll start with you, since we kind of gave you a hard time for waking up so late.
Yeah,
lazy bum.
It was a good episode. I like the things that it tied together. We obviously have storylines reconverging, which I know a lot of people had concerns with earlier in the season, that, oh, wow, all of a sudden, Moff Gideon is gone and what happened to that? And well, now we see it. Now we have that intersection again. It was good. I mean, we got to see some good Imperial action, which I'm always up for. We got to see a Mimbanese, much to my dismay. The mud troopers clearly didn't do their jobs.
Don't be racist, Tim.
But it was good for some reason, and I don't know exactly why. It fell maybe a little flat on me.
Okay.
It wasn't for a lack of story. The story was fantastic. The action was good. I don't know. I can't really put my finger on why it wasn't that exciting for me, but it was still a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. It definitely wasn't bad.
I mean, not every episode has to be the best episode ever. So
yeah.
All right. Tom, what about you? What'd you think of this episode?
I felt like it was, if you were to before the show came out, tell me what I would envision for a Star Wars show generally, this episode is what I would have pegged. Like a little bit campy. It felt like a film, like a movie at times, but it felt like you were watching something designed for the small screen. In some ways. It had some like prototypical like goofy humor here and there, like the interaction between Grief Karga and the Mithril was really fun. It wasn't epic or as epic or sweeping as some of the episodes that we've had, but I think it was a nice change of pace from last episode, and I think we're going to be thankful for it in hindsight when we get into next week's episode. So I enjoyed it.
All right.
Yeah.
Lou, what about you?
Similar to what these other guys have already mentioned. Yeah, I think it was a great kind of breather for us after last week's, epic episode. I was wrong. I thought we were going to get Ahsoka coming into the scene at the very end of the episode, not really kind of poke your head and waving hi, but, her showing up for the next episode to be about her. But we got something I thought was better, which was Gideon. So, and I think it was more than just the last, 2 minutes of the episode, because we had the scientist guy speak a little bit about it, and that moved that story along. We now know what they were doing when they're trying to get the asset earlier on. So to me, I thought this was nice that we got some movement on that part of the story.
Yeah. By the way, you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. Lou said that Moff Gideon is something better than Ahsoka.
I didn't say that.
Said you thought we were getting Ahsoka. You got
raked over the
something
coals.
better, which is Moff Gideon.
Wow.
I thought you were going to throw your lot
I
in.
thought you guys are my friends.
You said it, Lou. They're your words.
Yeah. There's some things that are just,
Different intent.
Wow.
Okay.
By the way, hi to everybody in the chat room. Thank you for hanging out with us this early on your Saturday morning.
Good morning.
I would still advise you to go back to sleep, but whatever. If you're going to be awake anyway, you might as well be here with us. That's
It's 8:30.
No, right? It's not even double digits yet. It's disgusting.
One thing that was neat was, I don't know if this was Carl Weathers' directorial debut of, directing anything, but the positive feedback that was coming back on social media that he clearly saw, at least on Twitter yesterday, that made me feel good. It was one of those instances where the creator and the fandom kind of came together.
Right.
It's almost like a living embodiment of that scene in The Predator where Carl Weathers and Schwarzenegger do the fist clap.
Yeah.
But that was neat to see that, his hard work, his vision sort of paid off, and he got a big clap on the back for it, which is good.
I think he deserves
it. And I gotta say that as a looking at this from the perspective of how the episode was directed, there was a fair amount of complexity to it. There's a lot of stuff going on. You had vehicle chases. You had a lot of people running through the corridors, so you have a lot of changes in camera angles to keep it interesting. There was a lot of stuff going on, and I paid attention to that specifically because I knew that this was the episode he was directing, and I wanted to see how he was going to do with it, and I thought he handled it really well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't really pay attention. I try to actively not pay attention to that sort of metadata the first time I'm watching something, but then the second time I try to pay more attention to it. And the fact that it didn't stand out on the first viewing is good. It means that it flowed just like all of the other material for the series. And that's good. That's exactly how it should be. It shouldn't stand out that his style of directing is so different from everybody else's that we've seen. So that's a good thing. I think that's a testament to the fact that he is certainly a competent director. And then, like you said, there were a lot of different things going on. There were a lot of different shots, whether it be the interior shot of the tank or the shot in the canyon, the interior shots in the base, the scenes through the town, a lot of different ways to frame shots, a lot of different choices in how to present things. And I think he did really well.
Yeah.
So, well, let's break down the episode a little bit. Like he said, he was the director, and also we see the return of his character, Grief Karga, and Cara Dune. And apparently in the background, and I missed this, a statue of IG-11.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
I didn't see it either, Lou.
In the town square.
Yeah, kind of like in the background on one of the streets, they had like a monument to IG-11 on display. So
yeah, I missed it too. I ended up seeing the shot on social media.
So
I will say that's you know, the recurring theme in this show is the line of fan service done right.
yeah,
And that's a good example of it. It's not in your, they're not like walking up to it and saying, oh, well, you know, and making a big deal out of it. It's there. It certainly ties into everything we saw last season. And if you notice it, it's an awesome moment. If you didn't, it makes you want to go back and watch it again. And it just makes it feel that much realer and connected.
And that's the way to do fan service, is when it's not a distraction.
Yeah.
And that was the key there, I think. So let's break down the episode a little bit. We return to Navarro, and Grief Karga is set up as, I guess, the mayor. Cara Dune is the marshal. We see her. He's
a reformed magistrate now. He's got his law license back.
Yeah, look at that. And I forgot to mention the actual opening of the episode.
It felt like every IT call that I've ever
What did I say to you guys during the live the call that we did on the watch together? I said that is every tech support call I've ever conducted with anybody.
Yep. I watched it last night with my wife, and she's like, "This is what you feel like when you talk to me about tech stuff, isn't it?" I'm like, "Yeah, pretty much."
Yeah.
It was just fantastic. And it was very unexpected. We did yesterday. Yesterday morning, we did the group watch feature that Disney Plus has, Lou and Eric and I, and we did a commentary track, which went to our bonus and premium members on Patreon. And that was one of the things that we brought up in there was like, you know, Din is talking to someone and we're wondering like who he was talking to. And then you get the shot with the child like down in that little corridor there, and him trying to coach him through it. And like, I was amazed that he knew his colors. Like, that was really cool. Good for him. It was really funny. It was really funny.
He doesn't even speak basic for all we know. So it's the equivalent of Din doing this, blah, 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 blah. Like he's pointing from like, I don't know, 12 feet away. So doing this, he's not pointing at anything distinct. What's the kid supposed to do? He doesn't.
Right.
It was.
That's why that shot at him.
Don't put the two wires together because.
Yeah.
That was great.
I like that he provides the technical explanation. Like, they're oppositely charged and it won't be good.
Yeah. Right. Well, if that's the case, then obviously I shouldn't. Yeah. All right. So yeah, that was cute. I like the fact that we're getting a little bit of humor at the opening of these episodes. So we return to Navarro, and they've kind of cleaned the town up a little bit. We get that shot of Cara Dune cleaning out what appears to be the armorer's room down in the covert, and I guess picking up a new pet.
I mean, she's left. She's gone somewhere in the galaxy. The Mythosaur skull, they have that shot of it gone, whether it's been stolen or taken with her. Who knows?
Yeah.
It didn't look like her tools were still left around, so...
No, it looks like they got rid of the important things, and it's just whatever was left to scavenge. A bunch of Aqualish down there tearing through things. Mm-hmm. So what I didn't...
They were played really well. You know, my memory of them in Legends, we haven't seen a ton of them portrayed in new canon, but like certainly Ponda Baba is like an embodiment of their species in terms of like his aggression and like just being a real a-hole. Mm-hmm. And they were all like that. It was like perfectly played. You know, folks that are writing a scene like that were aware of that species and how they've been depicted.
And I like the fact that they are getting consistent representations of the different alien species as they get to them.
Yes.
So that's nice to have that consistency.
I just wish they'd
there.
stop calling them by their species name as a racist.
Hey, Mithril. Hey, Quarren, pour me a drink. Like, what? Just how about barkeeper, pour me a drink, or hey, Joe? Like,
exactly.
I don't know.
Guy's got a
that
name.
was a little weird. Like, we talked about that in that episode, and then in this episode, Grief Karga does the same exact thing throughout the episode. And I'm like, really? Like, doesn't the guy have a name? I had to sit there and think, maybe is his name Mithril and I just misunderstood the pilot episode? But no, it's he is a Mithril.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the cast breakdown in IMDb, it just has him as Mithril.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, give him a name. So for all of the ways in which the writing is clearly not at all lazy, then with that, it kind of feels like it is a little bit like just call him Steve or something. Like give him some kind of
Steve.
Because I mean, they name everything in Star Wars, right?
Sure.
So
Steve actually seems like a very appropriate name for him too.
Right.
I agree with that. Well, this is why you have to buy the visual guide when it comes out next summer. They can't give everything away.
But if you're going to address him actively in the show, that's the point at which the guy writing the script said, oh, we should really put a name in here.
Yeah.
You know?
Steve.
I don't know. I'm just really confused by that. But anyhow, so we're walking through Navarro. We kind of see how the town is set up, and it looks like it's doing well. And we take the child and we drop him off in a room full of kids and a droid. No, he'll be fine here. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe if they're just going next door. But then they go next door, and then they fly off to an Imperial stronghold. What made him think that was the best option for a babysitter?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he thinks
you can trust a protocol
better
droid.
of droids now, but like there's a difference. Like it doesn't mean he's in love with them or something. And then to leave the child with a droid and a bunch of little kids seemed out of character.
Human children too, which is just that seems very odd. Every one of them was human.
Yep. Last night's viewing of that, I'm like, yeah, they're all where are the rest of the kids?
And all the aliens are just called by their species. This is a really racist show.
I do like that they had converted this bar that had been shot up to hell at the end of last season, and that's what they pick as their school. They're like, well, we've got a lot of buildings here, but this one's not in use anymore. So
well, bars are closed during the day. So what else are you going to do with the bar?
That's true. You maximize your revenue.
Makes sense to me. I'm surprised more bars around here don't do it. Well, this is West Virginia. I think maybe they do. I don't know.
It was cool to see that though. And I mean, like from a real world perspective, like, education is a big thing. And in places like Afghanistan, that's one of the most active missions that's been out there for years is building schools and that kind of stuff and helping people get educated. So when you look at a place like Navarro, which was just this absolutely lawless place where, human or life had little value to it, like that's a big thing. That's an important thing. So like to me, that stuck out as wow, that's progress, and that's really good writing to use that as a mechanism to show that.
And it's something we never see in Star Wars.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was good. Tim, you were talking about the challenge that Carl Weathers faced with this episode. And I think one of the big ones was this is the first episode since last season where we get some familiar characters coming back together from last season. And so they've not been seen thus far in season 2. He's got the tall task of, in 30 minutes, showing that these characters have developed, where they've come from, bringing this town to where it is now, and how it's not just Mando stepping into the exact same situation. And I think it's little scenes like that show, hey, Grief clearly had a hand in setting up this school. Maybe he's not such a bad guy anymore. He's a bit reformed. He's got a nicer cape and a little clasp. Things are different now.
That's all it takes. It's all about the cape.
It's nice context.
Yeah.
Yeah, capes are important.
Well, he had a nicer cape. Now it's all soiled.
Well,
that's true.
True. All right. So
they go to this Imperial base, which is supposed to be abandoned or mostly abandoned, with the goal of basically blowing it up so stuff that's there doesn't end up on the black market. surprise, surprise, it's pretty well occupied.
It was very reminiscent of Edu, like the Imperial base from Rogue One. I don't know if they took design elements, but it makes sense to me that if the Imperials are dropping these outposts all over the galaxy, they mentioned that this base was set up during the Imperial expansion, which is something I don't think we know too much about, but it makes sense that they would have these modular type units where it's not like stormtroopers are going in and building up bases or whatever. They can just drop these bases in, quickly get them set up and running, and get to the real meat of subjugating.
Right.
And that's the
one
real
does.
work.
Yeah.
I worry about construction.
So, what did you guys think about having Horatio Sands' character back, the Mithril? Did that bug you? Did that? I see some people online. Most people seem to have responded favorably to it. A couple of people are like, oh, really? They just brought him back? Why didn't they use another character? But I'm thinking, we get so much new in the series already. It's kind of nice to have some familiar characters. And I mean, we already had 2 familiar characters anyway in this episode, but was this a good move? Should they have introduced somebody new? Any thoughts on that? Did the humor with Horatio Sands in this episode work? Because I know we've talked before about What's-Her-Face. I've talked before about What's-Her-Face because her humor doesn't end up working for me in this series.
On Tatooine.
But this character does. So what did you guys think?
I mean, I appreciated the callback and also the association back to Grief in terms of their relationship and such. I don't really know why the guy had to tag along with them on the mission.
They needed a car.
He did end up being reasonably useful.
It's like when you're a teenager and you want to go somewhere, but you don't have a car. You call up the person, your friend who you don't really like, but they have the car, so you call them anyway.
It sounds like he's got a life debt too, so he's got some years to work off.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I did like the negotiation between him and Grief, where he was like constantly resistant to doing something, and Grief's like, "I'll take 30 years off, just to stop the argument."
Right.
Yeah.
How long is a Mithril's lifespan at that?
I don't know, but like this dude's going to work off 600 years in about 3 months.
Well, how long is Grief's lifespan? Because even if that guy lives for 600 years, it's not like Cargo's going to get anything out of it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, his kids might.
Look, now I'm dying, but you stay here. You've got another 200 years.
Right. You stick around.
I'll haunt you if you leave.
Put flowers at my grave every day. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, for me, it was okay. I mean, dude's a little annoying, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't like overly distracting. I was fine with it.
Who builds a control panel interface over a lava pit located on the back side of this big round structure thing? Like there's a walkway.
The same guys that put that operator station, in the mouth of the super laser
on the
Death
Star. Right. But so maybe like do not that. Like put it on the walkway side where you walk up to it, you hit the buttons and walk away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tim's exactly right. This is not only is it like typical Imperial architecture, like the U.S. government would put a control panel like that, and then they would pay, some exorbitant fee for it. It would be, top dollar from some contractor, and then it would immediately break because it would get melted.
It'd also be installed upside down, and only half of it would be wired up.
They'd have to run a study to see why it's dangerous and what we can do to fix it. And
Yeah. So apparently OSHA doesn't exist in Star Wars universe. By the way,
easy guys, government contractor here. So let's
sorry,
let's lay ixnay on the east way of anime.
Heaven forbid they find out.
Of the control panels that you install, Tim, they're all lava proof, so you're okay.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Absolutely. Right.
Yeah. I wasn't bothered at all by Mithril. I liked his character in the first season. I thought he was funny. It goes right back to our commentary about Pelimato and that humor, where if if you like the comedian, if you like the style, I think the character will probably work for you. If it doesn't, you don't. I really liked the back and forth, the like pure campy back and forth between Grief Karga and the Mithril the whole way through this. It was like something out of an 80s TV show, and I think they sort of leaned into it. And that's why that was one of the big reasons why I said what I said at the start, which is this is what I would have imagined a Star Wars show like goofy humor. They are really self-aware about it, and it's just fun Star Wars. So I liked him.
Yeah, I agree. I think it worked. So let's see what else about before we get to like the big reveal at the end. And anything else about the scene with before the escape?
There was a lot of it that was reminiscent of like Han and Chewie running through the corridors of the Death Star, you know, where they're just like running. So many shots of them just like running headlong through these corridors, which I just kind of found funny that like, hey, clearly you're in someone else's house. There's some unknown number of enemies here that are more than happy to blast you. And they're not like taking the time to slink around. They're just running. Right. You know, at any moment they could run around a corner and, oh, hey, there's 20 stormtroopers. But it was very Star Wars. Oh, yeah. And Fetmatic in the chat mentions the very classic stormtrooper banter as they're just like walking down the halls and commenting on things. And you always hear that they come through a door. There they are. Blast them.
Yeah. I mean, you also did say, there they are. Blast them was a great line to have back. Okay.
Yeah. There were actually a lot of
Load your
callbacks.
Weapons,
there were some things I like. There was one point they said, I'll get a technical crew in there. And I'm thinking, oh, but in A New Hope, it was get a scanning crew in there. But otherwise, it was like word for word. Like a lot of the interactions could have been pulled straight from A New Hope.
Yeah, it was good stuff. I really liked it, and I like anything that they give us that's inside of some kind of a structure like that. Whether it's in a ship or in a base. You know, we had this in the base, and then at the end, you know, we end up in an Imperial ship too. And so I like that stuff. I like those environments. I like the camera. I mean, mentioning again the directing. I like the camera work that it requires, because these aren't big sets, but they have to make them look big. And and I just you know, again, it's just kind of a behind the camera thing that I find really interesting.
I will say if Din had a piece of Beskar for every time that he's been promised that it's just like 10 stormtroopers or it's just like a few stragglers, no big deal, it's going to be quick in and out, he'd have like 6 more sets of armor by now for all that. One of my favorite scenes in the entire show is while Mithril is trying to use a plumbing tool to open this thing, and Din has like jetted up to the top, and all of a sudden you just hear the stormtrooper come falling, and he just thuds right at their feet.
And no one like even gives it a second look. It's like, dead stormtrooper. Okay. Oh, look, the door opens.
These last couple episodes have not done well for recruiting. I mean, no one's going to want to put on that white armor now. It's like, no.
Nope.
So we find out that the facility is actually a lab, and that you know, we see a lot of vats with Snoke bodies floating around in there. And apparently, so we get the hologram of I forget the scientist's name.
Dr. Pershing.
Pershing. Yep.
Yeah.
And he's talking about the M count. And he references the child, and he's talking directly to Moff Gideon, who he recorded it just 3 days ago. So we don't know where Pershing is. He doesn't appear to be there in the base, which is now destroyed. So if we're going to see him again, hopefully he's not there. And we know Gideon is still around. We know he's hunting. I mean, we know, the audience, but now Mando knows as well that Gideon is still around, hunting for the child. And then at the very end of the episode, to skip around a little bit, we see Moff Gideon on his ship with the sets of armor. Look a little bit like the Dark Troopers to some extent.
Yeah,
They were
very much inspired by Dark Troopers. If folks
Are they actually Dark Troopers, Tom? Do we know?
to recall,
yes. So if not in a way that I think the show intended it to be, but there is and I won't claim, I did not discover this myself. Somebody else pointed me in this direction, so I take no credit.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a descriptive audio track for all of these episodes, which is designed for folks that are either blind or vision impaired. It's like a narration of what is happening on screen,
Right.
almost like an audiobook track. You still hear the dialogue back and forth, but it just describes what's happening. And the audio track, if you turn that on for the last scene, it says that he's looking over rows of Dark Troopers.
wow,
There you go. Now I'm going to have to start rewatching with the descriptive audio track on.
It wasn't,
Yeah.
I won't dive down that rabbit hole, but it actually was kind of neat, like hearing the way that the stuff is described. If you've listened to any of the Del Rey audiobooks for Star Wars that have like a really high production level, it was almost like that. I would not want to watch that for like an entire episode, but for pieces, it was kind of neat.
Yeah.
yeah.
Check that out. Okay, so those are officially Dark Troopers then. And so we were talking yesterday. Tim and Lou both seem of the opinion that the idea is to make force sensitive or force wielding Dark Troopers. I initially kind of separated the two and thought, okay, the midichlorian thing is probably more for Moff Gideon. The people in the vats were probably the other victims, not the recipients of the blood transfusions that they're referring to. What do you think, Tom? What do you think the end goal here is? Are we looking at trying to get force sensitive Dark Troopers, or are we looking at two different projects here? And you think maybe Moff Gideon is just trying to, because it almost, the way they're talking about blood transfusions and stuff like that, I don't think the vats are to grow force sensitive clones. I think that that's where they keep whoever they capture who have high midichlorian count or some kind of midichlorian count, trying to extract that. And then I think they're trying this whole transfusion thing that they were talking about. They're trying to infuse existing people with the ability to use the force.
Those are all volunteers, by the way.
Oh, they're all volunteers. Of course.
Of course.
You know,
Of course they are.
completely voluntary, not subjected to these cruel
The Empire would
experiments at
never
all.
do that.
No,
Well,
no.
it's like the
this
drug
is the
trials
kinder,
we're doing
nicer
now
Empire.
for COVID, right?
Sure,
It's
sure.
like those things. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will say I did not expect at the at 4:40 a.m. on a Friday to be like racking my brain to go back to my days as a kid, a teenager, playing Dark Forces and trying to remember the plot details of that. If you didn't play those games, you hadn't played those games. That's where the Dark Troopers were sort of first seen.
Mhm.
I don't recall, and Tim, I asked you this question yesterday. I don't recall in any of the stories, to include the comics, the Empire ever in trying to infuse the Dark Troopers with like Force type abilities. They were either like advanced battle droids, or they were like exoskeletons that could.
I had played that game as well, and I don't remember that being any of the lore from that game.
Yeah.
So there's actually a couple different types of Dark Troopers.
Mm-hmm.
There are those that you guys mentioned that were, depending on the phases, they had them identified in phases. They were either cyborgs, or they were all droid, or they were all human. There is another kind of Dark Trooper that was in the Dark Empire 2 audio drama, which was a group of elite stormtroopers that had some kind of dark side force abilities.
Okay.
And so, like, very, very niche thing. They did show in the Star Wars Rebellion strategy game. And basically what I think what ended up happening is that, of course, then at the time you had these different entities that they had farmed things out to. that Lucasfilm had farmed things out to, and I think two of these entities ended up using the name Dark Trooper at the same time, fundamentally.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, we have these Dark Troopers, but then we also have these other Dark Troopers.
Super Dark Troopers.
Kind of like we had two different versions of the V-Wing. The Nintendo 64 Rogue Squadron game had an entirely different V-Wing than what we now have.
Exactly. So the ones that you guys mentioned, which were the droids or cyborgs or whatever, those are actually the more popular ones that a lot of people know. But then these more kind of less known ones, I think that's what these actually are that we see in The Mandalorian in this episode. I think that's what they're intended to be, or something very similar to it. I mean, we know that stuff that is drawn on Legends isn't taken as a one-to-one thing. A lot of it is
it's close.
They're drawing inspiration from, and then they're adjusting it as they
I will
need
say
to.
this.
Yeah.
And I think that going forward with this same storyline, I don't think he's trying to make Force adept troopers. I think he's using that to enhance their abilities, maybe not make them full Force sensitive, but in some way make them a better trooper.
I am going to be very disappointed if that's the storyline here. If it's like, Gideon wants to be more powerful, he's got the Darksaber, I could see him kind of craving becoming some sort of Sith himself. That storyline makes sense to me. If we are going to actually see any sort of a trooper with any sort of attunement to the Force, to me, that kind of breaks things a little bit, especially since this, given the time period that this takes place, it can't have been successful because we don't see it anywhere after that in the timeline.
Right.
And yet, if it's going to be successful enough to be a threat here in the series, then it should have been effective enough to then also show up later in the timeline. Like, you can't have both things, I guess.
See, I kind of, I mean, I get what you're saying. I kind of equate this to the whole, I just blanked now. The troopers from Rogue One.
Okay.
Help me out.
Death Troopers.
Death Troopers.
Yeah.
So, they were a more advanced trooper that the technology for making them was lost. It's Scarif. So this is kind
even
of
though we do see some they had some in season 1 at the end when Gideon shows up, right? They had a couple, I thought.
Oh yeah.
Right.
But
right.
see, to me,
part,
that's a different type of training. That's like the equivalent of special forces training in the military. And even like the Crimson Guard, if you look at the comic books, they weren't just a royal guard that just kind of stands there and does nothing. Like, these were super, 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 super elite, like ninja level combatants that were protecting the Emperor. Like, to me, that's just a different both trooper technology and level of training. That's not like when you start injecting people with the Force.
See, I don't think it's injecting them with the Force, and I think that's a rabbit hole you don't want to get down either.
I'm making generalizations.
If Gideon could try to make himself into a Force user by injecting him with someone else's blood, that to me breaks the whole thing. I'd much rather see this be some sort of a super soldier serum, a la Captain America, in a trooper format to give them some sort of an enhanced battlefield trooper.
Yeah. See, to me, it doesn't sit right.
I think it could be a piece of a larger plan. So, follow me with, grab onto the tow rope of my logic speedboat here. But the navigation officer, the Imperial officer that makes contact with the little Mimbanese worker, she says you're going to be rewarded in the new era. Not like, hey, you're going to get your 10,000 credits or whatever. There is clearly something bigger afoot here, right? This is not Moff Gideon paying little bounties for stuff. There is this undercurrent, I think, that the New Republic will be going away soon. The Empire will be reestablishing itself in some form. Gideon is probably aware of something related to the Emperor's contingency plan. Clearly, he wasn't wiped out in it following the events of Return of the Jedi, and so I think they are moving something bigger. And so, to Eric, your original question, I think there are two separate sort of tracks for this this type technology or whatever the science experiment is. I think at the core of it, it's probably something connected to bringing the Emperor back. And I, quite frankly, based on my opinion of where Rise of Skywalker went, I would probably back off my criticism of that movie a little bit if they were to like really flesh out in this show some of the seeds for that sort of like reveal.
I guess.
Right? And so I think that's part of it, that maybe there's this they're trying to perfect cloning or whatever it is so that they can create Snoke or whoever else. I don't think it makes much sense for them to just create straight dark troopers. What difference is a squad of even really advanced robots or exoskeletons going to make at this point in the war? Like, you've lost. I mean, you're, unless Moff Gideon has like entire battalions.
Right. If you could mass produce it.
Sleeve. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, maybe you're trying to scale it, but I think Gideon has the forces that he has. He has control of a ship that he has, not because he's a warlord that's splintered off, but because he is a working arm of the Emperor's larger plan. If he were just some random Joe that had somehow claimed the allegiance of a few stormtroopers and was just operating, you'd see him more like the client in the first season. He'd have some dirty stormtroopers, maybe ones that aren't loyal. He wouldn't have all these resources at hand, and probably wouldn't have this connection to this larger science project that's going on. Yeah. And we've seen in past canon materials, particularly the Clone Wars and to a certain extent Rebels, there have been repeated attempts to make armies of force sensitive slaves. You had the Inquisitorius, which were not made but were force users that were sort of bent to the dark side and created into this strike force. In the Clone Wars, you see the Emperor Palpatine make efforts to capture younglings and create an army of Sith spies. This is obviously a step beyond that if you're taking non-force users and somehow infusing them with the force. But it's not unheard of that they would try to make soldiers or some sort of rank and file warriors using the force. And if that is just a piece of the bigger play to bring the Emperor back, maybe there's a larger puzzle we don't see. That was a lot. No,
that's a good solid theory. I kind of hope they don't go anywhere near the Palpatine thing. I think.
Me too. I was thinking the same thing.
Some of us have such a bitter taste in our mouths about the Palpatine thing and how it was handled. And I wouldn't even say that I personally am bitter about that. I don't think, like, for my own perspective, I don't think that's the right word, but I know a lot of people, that's the perfect word. And I don't know. I kind of hope they don't go anywhere near that. But if they do, I hope they do it in such a way that it actually somehow improves, as you alluded to, kind of improves episode 9 and makes episode 9 make more sense. Because I'm still a little like, if you're going to do something as ballsy as put Palpatine back into Star Wars in episode 9, there needs to be a little bit more backstory than just a sentence in the opening crawl. Like, there has to be, you got to give us a little bit more than that.
But at this point, it's there, it's over, it's done with. I'd rather not go back into that.
But that's the thing. It's done with.
Yeah.
We got what we got. Let's get back to, like, but on the flip side, if there is a way to make that experience better, I mean, I'm all for things that make other pieces of the canon more interesting. And I'm generally in support of that. I'm nervous about going anywhere near the Palpatine thing.
And I think that there are ways to better contextualize what they gave us in episode 9 to kind of make things make a little bit more sense for us. Because, and we've talked about it a lot on Echo Base, it was just kind of thrown at us. It was like opening crawl. Hey, he's back. Right. Like no explanation whatsoever. We got a little bit of conjecture from Palpatine in the third act about like what transpired, but it was just kind of it was still yada, yada, yada. Misa back.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And Eric, to your point, I thought about it almost in a different vein as we shift into what will surely be Ahsoka's appearance in the next episode. You don't bring in a character like that, especially this monumental move of taking that beloved character from animated and quite frankly, the risk of trying to translate her into live action just to be a role player here. I don't expect to see her have like a major recurring role in the show, and the rumors seem to bear that out. But you don't make that play just for her to come in and be like, oh yeah, well, I was a Jedi, and here, let me help you with some directions that might help you find where this child is going.
Right.
I think she is being brought in a purposeful way. I think the fact that, Filoni, say what you will about him, but I don't think that he would, given his love for that character and of Star Wars storytelling, would be okay with just using her as a role player, just to advance the story along. And I say that because I recall his interviews and discussions in Rebels with bringing Vader in. And he was like, you don't bring Vader in just to, for no reason. Right. Just to have Vader and say that you had a show that featured Vader. He's got to serve a purpose.
Like everybody does with 3PO and R2-D2. You don't bring 3PO and R2-D2 in just to say that you brought in.
Yeah.
Sorry, I am a little bitter about that.
I think there's a bigger play here. It's gonna maybe be a little clearer at the end of this season, but I wouldn't hate for it to give some better context and some better feet under Rise of Skywalker. Okay.
Well, either way, at some point we're obviously going to find out more about this because it was kind of a big deal. Right? I mean, and this is something obviously very prominent that we are supposed to be paying attention to, but of course, introduced immediately before the major distraction at the halfway point. So here's this big bomb, and before you have time to process it, we're going to redirect your attention over to Ahsoka. So, because we all know that that's coming next episode. It has to.
Yeah. But it makes a lot more sense now to still have Baby Yoda around, having the child around, because up until now, it's felt like a distraction just having him there, because I'm like, why is the child still here? Why is he still being innate to this thing when there's no more story to be done?
I have an answer.
We're getting the answer. Well, yeah, I know what the answer is too. Money and marketing.
Well, no. It's when we get, this is not spoilers, this is speculation. When we get our Ahsoka spinoff series, she's going to take the child with her. And he's going to be on the... Think about it. For the people who don't know who Ahsoka is, who aren't like longtime Star Wars fans, everybody, even like the non-Star Wars fans, are obsessed with Baby Yoda. If they were to take him and put him on a different series, that series immediately has a following. If you want your Ahsoka series to immediately have everybody watching it all over the world...
That's good. That's good speculation.
Baby Yoda's transitioning over there, and it makes sense story-wise, too, because she's a Jedi. So she is going to be the new caretaker of Baby Yoda.
And then we're going to, see, like, angsty, adolescent, uber force-strong
teenage
Yoda,
Groot.
Who's just like, I don't want
Groot.
a bedtime. I want to stay up later. Screw you, Ahsoka.
He just uses the Force to slam his door.
It's going to happen. That'd be funny.
You're not my real mom anyway.
That would be funny.
I love it.
That's not my own theory, by the way. That was someone else's, but I agree with it emphatically. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Anyway, so the only other things we haven't talked about this episode, and we do need to wrap up here pretty quickly. We've got the exit, the chase scene, and then we've got the scene with Cara Dune and the X-Wing pilot at the end. which we can come back to that very briefly in a moment. But the chasing at the end there, I have to say, I was really impressed with the speeder bikes exiting the facility. That shot, the choreography of it, loved it.
Yeah.
That was
The
awesome.
fact that a couple of them like epically screwed up.
Yep, that too. That worked.
But the thing is, it also emphasized the danger of it, that it wasn't just like this big jump. I mean, there's this craggy, rocky cliff that they're having to navigate, which they clearly haven't done before. It was just hey, the big tank thing jumped, so clearly we can. And they didn't think about like, oh no, we're kind of too close together. If you hit that thing, then we all die.
But it also demonstrated how brave the others were for having done it at all, because clearly it's not the type of thing that they would normally do. Like, this was obviously an emergency circumstance.
I appreciated the different tactics that they showed with these scout troopers as well. And also mixing it up that, hey, we have the scout troopers and then we had TIE fighters come in. And, you know, Greef was pretty effective against the scout troopers. I don't understand. We talked about this in our commentary about Greef shooting at the sides of the cliff, which seemed to be very intentional. Yet the story didn't have like the TIE fighters having to like juke around boulders that were falling at them or anything. So it was just a very strange
Greef
thing.
Karga is the worst shot ever. Worst shot ever. Like, even with the speeder bikes, like, they're right up on the back of the vehicle. Okay. And he's got this like chair-based turret, and he's got a window. It's not even a window. It's like an open space, which is, I don't understand that aspect of the design of the tank, but that's a whole different story. And it's right in front of you, and you could just look and fire. Like, if you're 3 feet away from me and I pull a pistol, I don't need to look down the scope of the pistol, because you're right there. I could close my eyes and fire and still hit you because you're right there. Okay. So then he looks down at his little targeting computer, and you got the crosshairs, and the speeder bike takes up the whole thing, and he shoots and he still misses. Like, what? And so then he's shooting the sides of the cavern, and I couldn't tell if he's just a really bad shot and he's aiming for the TIE fighters, or if he's trying to hit the sides of the canyon and have them collapse on the TIE fighter. So if he's shooting at the TIE fighters, he failed because he missed every time. If he's hitting the sides of the canyon to have that collapse on the TIE fighters, he failed because TIE fighters weren't even like, they didn't care. It's like, wow, this is nowhere close to me. I'm fine. He's horrible.
That's what happens when you put a magistrate or a lawyer in the gun
Right.
seat.
You never have an administrative person behind the trigger.
Great ideas. Poor
It was
execution.
horrible. The Mithril would have done a better job.
This is why Tom is not allowed in tanks.
That's right.
Well,
The Army, like, there was actually a memo.
Yeah. You see where the water cans get strapped to the side? That's where they put them.
wow.
I laughed out loud at the part where they go over the edge in the troop carrier. They're all screaming, and then they land. Mithril speeder breaks their fall, and he just yells, "Was that my speeder?"
Yeah.
It was.
That was good.
Well, I had a hard time with that because they're clearly going off and clearly going nose down, like gonna pile drive right into the ground, and yet they land tail first.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was some neat maneuvering somewhere.
Tail first, mostly flat. Yeah, that was confusing
But
too.
The Razor Crest coming in was pretty fantastic.
It was.
though.
Right.
That was
fix
like
that
really
for-
epic. We saw a fully repaired Razor Crest, which was great. Those guys did it really fast. But hey,
I
that's
couldn't
okay.
believe how many haters we had in Discord over the last few weeks. Get rid of the Razor Crest. He needs a new ship. No, fix this one.
He just needs it fixed up.
And let's go.
Yeah.
Like, this is an awesome ship. We're not getting rid of the Razor Crest.
If they get rid of it, anybody that dropped 350 on that has
He's going to be pissed.
special one would be really upset.
Money back.
Oh. All right.
So yeah, that was really cool. And then we had the whole scene with the X-wing pilots. They really only showed one of
Right.
them. returning and kind of doing this little bit of investigation of, hey, what was going on? You saw Imperials. What's the whole story here? Of course, Greef only gave them the stuff he thought that they needed to know. And then you had this exchange between the TIE pilot and Cara Dune about, hey, I read about you. You were a rebel. You're pretty awesome. We'd love to have you back. You are an Alderaan. But clearly you didn't lose anyone on Alderaan.
Yeah, understatement question of the year.
What was the name of the one person that you lost?
Did you lose anyone?
Right.
Yeah. The whole freaking planet. But no, it was. I thought that was pretty good, and we had this. What exactly was it that the pilot gave her?
A communicator.
Was it a medal? Was it a communication?
No, it wouldn't have been a medal. First of all, you don't carry around a medal in your pocket that's that big just in case you find someone to give it to, and then it's not like you're handing them out left and right. I think it was a communicator.
Too pretty to be a communication device, though.
It described it. I did listen to that scene with the audio descriptor on, and it doesn't give it away, but it does say something. I think it says it's like a medallion with the Starboard logo, and then there's like a ribbon type design at the bottom where the red stripes are. Which if it had just been the Starboard logo on it, I might have thought otherwise. But seeing the stripes on the bottom just was a real callback to like actual military awards, like the ribbons that you see worn on the uniform. And Eric, I generally agree with you. I don't carry medals around or whatever, but in the canon context, Alderaan was probably the most significant event, an event that got a lot of people to join the rebellion. He served during that period.
Right.
And if it was some sort of service medal related to Alderaan, I don't know how, like you flew through the wreckage of the planet or something. I don't know. That might have been something that was a little more meaningful than like, the average award that you get flying for the rebellion and, him handing it over. I think it might be
practically large though.
It was.
That's
true.
my thing. Like
that
you were talking about, so military medals, typically if you're actually going to wear them or carry them around, like they're ribbons, they're little tiny things about this long and about this tall.
Like a paperweight
and this medallion seemed to be like this big.
That was as big as the medal that Luke and Han got. Again, that's like
right, and that one was flat. This one seemed to be like when he set it on the table, it seemed to be raised quite a bit.
It was kind of like an easy button.
Right, which is kind of why I thought maybe it's some sort of a communicator device, because it didn't seem flat like a medallion, and it was too big, in my opinion, to be a medal, like some sort of just an honorific token. And I agree with all of the logic you're saying, Tom, but again, the practicality of the device itself was weird.
Whatever it is, I think we're going to see. She lingered on it enough that either it's something that she kind of fixates on and it gets her to rejoin the fight, so to speak, or it's going to come in later as a token that she uses to like a get out of jail free card type deal where that's used to sort of signify that she's on the good guy's side. Sort of like in The Last Jedi where they go into the creature pen and they're about to get told on by the kid and they show the little ring, the Starboard symbol on the ring. Right. Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
It'd be cool if it was a communicator.
I mean, we will see it at some point.
Listening device, and they're going to spy on them now.
Right.
So they can listen into what they're doing.
Right. I mean, either way, we are going to find out because they will revisit it somehow. Again, it was too prominent for them not to come back to it. They're not that bad a storyteller that they're not going to introduce something like that and then just forget about it. So
I will confess that after the episode, I spent probably 15-20 minutes culling through reference books to see, because I didn't recognize the thing itself. So I went back to see if there was something obscure that I had missed. I didn't see anything. If somebody was more eagle-eyed out there and caught something, I'd be really excited to know.
If Tom doesn't know it doesn't exist.
That's the running joke around here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, unless there's anything else, I think that's probably going to wrap this episode up. I know we're expecting to see Ahsoka next episode. Just kind of logically. Plus, we also know Dave Filoni's directing the next one. If we don't see Ahsoka, then I'm just going to stop making Star Wars predictions forever because, I mean, come on. So, any other last comments on this? Are we all looking forward to the next episode? We've got, 4 left?
Oh,
We're at the halfway point now, right? This was the 4th episode. We've got 5, 6, 7, and 8 to go. There's a lot. There's kind of a lot to wrap up, I feel like.
I hope
they
this
got
next
season
episode
3,
is
so we just got to
longer
lead
than
into
30
season 3.
Yeah, I hope it's a longer one.
Yeah,
But yeah, and we have to save some things for season 3. That's true. But I mean, we do have Bo-Katan is probably going to end up in the show again, probably this season. We've got the resolution of the Darksaber issue because that was specifically brought up. We've got Ahsoka. We've got finding the Jedi, and then will the child be left with Ahsoka, or is he going to try to continue to find the rest of the Baby Yoda's race, species? Like, there are a lot of questions to wrap up in 4 episodes. And if you look back at the last 4 episodes, like, we got some big things, but and there's also the Boba Fett thing too that we have to revisit, and that's
there's a lot of
gotta
different
be its own
threads they have to
focus.
pull.
Yeah,
but they also don't have to resolve it all this season.
They don't. No. But they have to give us enough
things that are going to continue.
Yeah, they have to give us enough to say, okay, we know we're coming back to that, as opposed to they brought it up and they've forgotten about it. Like there has to be a little bit of continuity.
Right.
So, all right. Well, I tell you what, we'll be back next week with more stuff. So that's going to do it for this episode of The Outer Rim. Thank you for hanging out with us, and thank you to everybody in the chat room. I know we haven't been too active with the chat room this time around. A few fewer people, I guess technically is the right way to say it, but that sounds very inelegant. But we didn't have as many people this time around because, it's a Saturday morning when people sleep. Like,
who's sleeping?
I should
almost
be.
9:30. No one's sleeping.
I'm going back to sleep. I tell you that.
Well, you
have a very
time
specific
clock,
circumstance.
Yeah.
It's 9:30. We're still not in double digits yet. Even if I were off this weekend, I'd probably still go back to sleep because it's just wrong to be up when it's single digits on a Saturday morning.
If you're 12,
I act like it. All right. So that's going to do it. Thanks for hanging out. If you haven't checked out our video shows yet, if you're still getting the audio for this, which is fine. I mean, we promote that, but we also would like you to check out our YouTube channel. Go to randomchatter.com/YouTube, and you can see our bright, smiling, sleep-deprived faces, which is very exciting. There's a subscribe button down below you can click, and there's another button next to it that you can click to get notifications of when we go live. Which, don't worry, if your phone's in Do Not Disturb mode, it's not going to wake you up this early on a Saturday morning, we promise. We're not that mean. I mean, come on. So, so check that out. Subscribe, like, send us comments. The best way to contact us, actually, is through Discord. There's a link in the show notes below, or you can go to randomchatter.com/Discord. We have an Outer Rim channel there. So feel free to come in and talk to us about this episode. Be mindful about spoilers and stuff like that. You can use spoiler tags in Discord if you need to block something out for people to click on before it's revealed. For our Patreon donors, and this includes those who only donate $1 a month even. That's it. We have an entire additional section of Discord that we've created kind of as a special thank you to our members. And if you donate even $1, you are a member. We're a nonprofit organization, and that makes you a member, and that gets you access to a Star Wars category of channels as well as many others. And that includes a Mandalorian spoiler section where right after you watch the episode at 3 a.m. on Friday morning, you can hop in there and start talking about it right away, like Tom and I do. And you can immediately start talking about it and not have to feel guilty about ruining it for other people. The people who go to that spoiler channel already have seen the episode. So it's a safe space to talk about whatever you want to talk about. So
We're not bothering Tim at 5 a.m.
Well, I mean, I could give out his phone number and you can text him.
That's true. I'd approve of that.
Oh, there you go. I've got approval. It's a done deal.
It's
Come
legal.
find us in Discord and we'll start passing out his cell phone number for you. That's randomchatter.com/Discord.
Oh, good.
That's going to do it for this episode, though. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we will see you again for episode 5 of The Mandalorian. Take care.